So the St. Louis Park Climate Action Plan, some of you may be familiar with this already, but in 2018, the City of St. Louis Park City Council passed a climate action plan with the ambitious goal of achieving carbon neutrality or having a net zero carbon footprint by 2040. The plan provides actionable strategies that residents, businesses, and the city can pursue to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and the impacts of climate change. The plan was created in partnership with members of the Environment and Sustainability Committee, the High School Environmental Club, which is also known as Roots and Shoots, and I Matter, which is a national nonprofit that empowers youth with the tools to tackle climate change. So just to go over some of the goals of the Climate Action Plan, the Climate Action Plan itself describes 7 midterm goals that will reduce the city's overall carbon emissions by 55% by 2030. And one of those goals is to reduce energy consumption in residential buildings by 35%. And that's shown in this graph with this sort of peach-colored part of the diagram. So being a resident of St. Louis Park, that is where you come in. By taking the first step to understand your home's energy use, you can identify ways to help you save energy and money while at home, which can help the city meet our Climate Action Plan goals. So now I will hand it over to Carmen at the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota.
Great, thank you so much, Annie, and thank you to all that are attending. We're excited to be here with you tonight and very happy to answer any questions you have. So we encourage you to put your questions in the chat box as we're going forward, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go along. So I want to spend just a few minutes introducing our organization. We are the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota, CUB for short, but not CUB Foods, but that sometimes gets mixed up with people. But we are a nonprofit, independent consumer advocate organization. So our role is to help consumers have all the best information they can have at their disposal to make good energy choices for their homes and for their households. Next slide, please. So our organization kind of has 2 different branches to it. The first is outreach, and that's the team that Hannah and I are on, and you can see us now working remotely from home. This event is a great example of some of our outreach. We do a lot of educational presentations. In a more normal situation, non-COVID, we would also be out in the community doing tabling events at different community festivals and things, so hope to get back to that at some point in the not too distant future. And then the other primary service we provide is we give free energy bill consultations. So we will talk with you over the phone or via video now about your specific energy concerns and the unique things about your household, and give you customized suggestions to reduce your energy use, to save money, take advantage of different programs and rebates that might apply to you. So that's something at the end of the presentation we'll be providing more information about. So next slide, please. And then the second part that our organization plays an active role is in consumer advocacy. So we're very active at the state level when it comes to legislation related to energy issues that affect Minnesota consumers. And we focus on residential and small business consumers. And then we're also very active at the Public Utilities Commission. And if you're not familiar with that organization, they are the body that gives permission for your utility providers, Xcel and CenterPoint, to offer programs, and they'll give permission whether or not your rates will go up. So they're a very important body, and we're actively following the activities of that group and speaking out on behalf of consumers. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now we're going to be doing a little bit of polling. So with just a little patience, Annie's going to put up some polls for us. We just want to get a sense of who's in the audience and kind of what your unique situation is related to utilities in your household.
Yep, so I will pull those up here. We'll do one at a time. Here's the first one.
Okay, first one is, do you rent or own the unit that you live And if you happen not to be in a multifamily building and are just participating, feel free to still answer that in the appropriate way.
It looks like everyone has answered, so I'm going to close the poll here. Carmen, can you see the results, or would you like me to read them?
Could you read them, please?
Yep. So 25% of folks here rent and 75% own their units.
Okay, great. And we asked that question because the opportunities you have to control some of the things in your home that use energy is dependent on whether you rent or own the unit. So it's helpful for us to know who in the audience is in the different situations. So we can move on to the next poll, please.
Okay, here's the second one.
Okay, so we understand in multifamily buildings, there's different setups in terms of how utilities are paid for. So please just answer the one that makes the most sense for your situation.
And we'll wait a little bit here. I see someone else just joined, so welcome. We are just going through some polls to get a sense of who's in the room. Okay, I'll go ahead and close this one.
So it looks like quite a few people are having to pay for both electricity and gas. And then one person, everything's included, and then a couple of people didn't answer. So thank you. And we'll go on to the next poll.
Okay. Oh, should be opened.
And then we just want to get a sense of the type of building that you're in. Maybe just a little bit of a preview. If you did have a bill consultation with us, we would ask a number of other questions too to get an understanding of how your household works. So how big is your unit? How many people live in it? What's your schedule? All those types of things affect how much energy your household's consuming. And so just even being in a multifamily building, typically you're going to use less than a single family home would, just because, but by the nature of the building.
I'll close this one. And then we should be able to see the results.
Great, a nice mix. Super, thank you. Thanks for sharing that information with us. Okay, we can go back to the presentation.
Okay. Great. I will start sharing the screen again. Okay, here we go.
Okay, then go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so given this unique situation that we're all experiencing, we felt it was important to talk a little bit about some of the challenges and issues related to COVID-19 in people's utility services. So in case you weren't aware, and hoping that most people know this, but important, I think, to reiterate that especially for folks who are struggling to keep up with their bills during this unique time, Excel and Centerpoint have promised during the peacetime emergency, which we're still currently in, is that they will be suspending all disconnections. They will be reconnecting people who were previously disconnected. They're not going to be charging late fees, and they're going to be willing to arrange payment plans with their customers. So if you are struggling or falling behind, it's important to know this. What we strongly encourage you to do is if you are falling behind and not able to pay your full bills, reach out to Excel and Centerpoint and explain the situation and get on one of these payment plans. it's going to be really helpful for you going forward too, and to be able to continue to pay at least some of that, because it's not as if the bills are going to go away, but you're just likely going to have more time to pay them. But it's important to try to keep up as much as you can. The other thing to note too is that after the peacetime emergency expires, and this has kind of been a moving target, the governor has extended it a few times already, but at the point that that stops, both Excel and Centerpoint are going to provide a 60-day notice after that emergency expires before they start resuming disconnections again. So hopefully that's helpful information. And we encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns related to this. Next slide, please. Yep, so kind of reiterating some of the things I already touched on. If you are falling behind, please contact your utility, ask to get on a payment plan that's going to work for you based on your current situation. It's important to tell them that you're financially affected by COVID-19 as well. And then just get reassurance that they're not going to be disconnecting you. And we will be going over, there's a number of resources to help you get caught up on your bills that we'll be touching on briefly during this talk as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so speaking of help with bills, again, a lot of people are in a different situation than they may have expected themselves to be in several months ago. So we wanted to just make people aware of various forms of assistance to help with bills. So a federal program called Energy Assistance is available to both renters and homeowners. It's based purely on household size and income. And there were a number of modifications made to this program recently to address the COVID-19 emergency. Typically the time in which you can apply for this is from October 1st is when they start reviewing applications to May 31st. This year, they actually extended it to July 1st. So it's no longer open anymore, but coming again this fall, it will be available. And this has been, the chart you see here gives the example of income based on household size that sets the limits for whether or not you're eligible. Another change that was made was that typically you have to show 3 months worth of income, and it was reduced to 1 month, recognizing that people's situations changed pretty quickly during this emergency. So there were changes made to try to allow more people to take advantage of this benefit. And there is help to pay for your energy bills. And then there's also what's called emergency assistance that can help you recover from arrears that you may have, bills that you've built up and that you need to get addressed to avoid getting shut off. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, additional help to keep in mind, and again, we encourage you, even if it doesn't apply to you, just to share this information with others who could benefit from it. If you are eligible for energy assistance, you can also get additional discounts on your bills through 2 programs. One's called Power On with Xcel Energy, and then the other one is called the Gas Affordability Program through Centerpoint. And when we go over the bill in a few minutes, I'm going to show you a line item that actually helps pay for these programs. So everyone who pays a utility bill helps contribute to these programs to make it easier for people to stay up to date on their bills, not run into arrears, and not run into shutoffs. The organization that administers this program is called Energy Sense, and the number's listed there. Again, if you're eligible for energy assistance, you can also access additional resources through a group called the Sustainable Resources Center. And they provide a lot of free installs for your home. So for example, if you have an older window unit air conditioner, you could potentially get that replaced with a new, more efficient model. That's just one example. They do a number of programs like that. So definitely worth looking into if you are eligible. And beyond energy assistance in these programs that we mentioned, we also encourage people to look at a wide variety of potential sources of help. So the county, the Salvation Army has a heat share program. Various community social service agencies may be able to provide help, local houses of worship. And if you happen to be a student, often local colleges and universities will have some assistance for emergency situations and other help too. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now we're going to jump into how your house uses energy. So this is a typical home in Minnesota, a typical household. And you'll probably notice that over half of the energy used in an average home is heating and cooling. So when we are looking for opportunities for households to not only save energy, but to save money, that's the go-to point. That's usually where most people have the biggest opportunity to reduce their energy use. The next is water heating, which is something maybe you haven't really thought about too much, but it uses a significant amount of energy. So there's also this nexus between water use and energy use. So typically the more water you're using, the more energy you're using. So being thoughtful about how you use water and energy is really good at as well. And we just got a note that says someone needs to leave, and then asking if there'll be an update sent afterwards.
Yes, so we will send out a recording of the rest of the webinar along with any links we might mention as well, and some other resources too that you might find helpful.
Great, thanks for asking that question. Okay, so if we go down the line, we have water heating, then we have appliances. So that would be like your refrigerator, stove, if you may have an extra freezer, all of those types of appliances, washers, dryers. Then we have lighting, about 10%. And then electronics is only about 5%. And we get a lot of questions about this. The nice thing is, a lot of us have many more electronics than we used to, but they tend to be very energy efficient. The newer the electronic, usually the less energy it uses. Again, it's going to depend how many you have and how many are plugged in and things, but they tend to be fairly energy efficient. We just encourage you to unplug them or turn them off when you're not using them. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, now we want to jump into understanding the electricity bill. So we pulled up the Excel energy bill, and want to point out a couple things when you're looking at this chart. So, and maybe I'll ask in the chat if anyone has any observations. So if you can focus on the bar chart, it incorporates 13 months, an August to another August. And if you wouldn't mind chatting in some things that you notice by looking at the bar chart. Anything that stands out? What do you notice when you look at the 1st August to the 2nd August? Okay, well, one of the things you'll notice is that 2nd August is significantly higher than the 1st August in terms of usage. So that's what the bar chart is showing. And the clue is actually right below in the little table where we have daily averages. You'll notice that what's listed as last year, that's that 1st August you see, is the average temperature was 73 degrees. The next year was 75 degrees. So it's very likely that that increase that you see from August to August was due to additional air conditioning used in the summertime. Just that 2 degrees can make quite a difference. And you'll notice looking at this chart that the peak usage for electricity in this particular household is in the summer months. And that's quite typical because usually air conditioning is what drives an electricity bill in the summer. You'll see a little mini peak in the winter months. You'll notice December, January, February. And that's often because the furnace is running. That takes a little more electricity. People are home more. The lights are on a little bit longer. But this is a pretty typical pattern that we expect to see in most homes. If we see something different, it usually raises a lot of questions. So for example, if there was a high winter peak, which we see this, that usually indicates that someone's using a space heater when we see a really high, because a space heater uses a significant amount of energy in the winter time. It also could be a humidifier. Sometimes we see really high bills in the spring and throughout the summer, and it's someone needing to run a dehumidifier. So all of these things can kind of show up in the energy bills, and this is something that we look at closely. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, next we're going to go over some of these line items in a bill just to give you an understanding of what's in your bill and what you can control and not control. So we've broken it into fixed cost variables, taxes and fees, and then some saver switch programs. So starting out with the basic service charge, this is a charge that is just given to you regardless of how much energy you consume. It doesn't matter how big your home is, how much energy you use, you're just going to pay a basic service charge. It's either going to be $8 or $10. And this would be the same on your CenterPoint gas bill as well. The other fixed charge, and I referenced this a little bit earlier, is the affordability charge. It's 98 cents. This is where the funding comes for those discounted electricity and natural gas programs that I mentioned. Power On, and then the gas affordability program would show up on your CenterPoint gas bill if you have that bill. This funds the discount for people who are income qualified. The green highlighted areas are all variable costs. So these costs are completely dependent on how much energy you're consuming. And one thing you'll notice in this particular bill is that there's a summer charge and a winter charge. And the summer charge, if you look at the rate, is higher than the winter charge. And I mentioned earlier that most households have higher energy bills in the summer, where we are right now. They're not only using more, but they're paying more for what they use. So it's just something to keep of note as you're thinking about your household energy use and getting a little bit more benefit if you can try to reduce your usage in the summer. This last couple of weeks have been a tough example of us really struggling with the heat. So I'm guessing that a lot of us are going to see pretty high bills the next one we get from if we're running our air conditioners to try to keep cool. The summer months charge is from June through September. It's 4 months. And then the rest of the year is a winter charge. And you'll notice that that's less. And again, for most households, are using less electricity in those winter months than in the summer months. The next charge you see is a fuel cost charge. And that's what we call a pass-through charge. So it's the fuel that Xcel has to buy to power the power plants. So this is the natural gas that they buy, the coal that they buy. With solar and wind, there's no fuel, so there's no cost. Some of you might participate in the wind source program, for example. And if you do that, you're going to see a credit on the fuel cost if you have all of your energy coming from this wind source program. You're paying just a small premium on your bill to participate in that program, but you're not getting charged the fuel cost charge. So the difference is usually less than a dollar per 100 kilowatt hours that you consume. If you have any questions about that, we can go over your bill related to that. The next, and one thing to note, the fuel cost charge fluctuates each month based on what the markets are for the various fuels that are being purchased. The decoupling charge, or adjustment rather, is a little bit confusing. The best way I can kind of describe it is that if you're an energy company, you want to sell energy. However, there's all these policies out there encouraging are telling us to use less energy, and the utilities are supposed to encourage us to use less energy and to buy efficient appliances and so forth. So this decoupling adjustment kind of trues up the situation for the utilities, in that if they sell less energy than what was sort of agreed upon or projected, then we get charged a little bit more. If they sell more energy than what was projected and agreed upon, then we get a credit on our bill. So if you start watching your bills, 1 month you may see a credit, 1 month there might be a bit of a charge. The point of it is that so the utilities are not discouraged to have us try to be more efficient. And I hope that makes sense. It's a little challenging concept, but that's what that means. Okay, and then I also want to point out, if you jump to the other green line, resource adjustment. If any of you have ever gotten a rebate for replacing an appliance, or maybe having an old refrigerator taken away, this is where that money comes from to pay for the rebate. So we're all paying into this fund, and it allows us to be rewarded for getting more efficient appliances and mechanical systems. So we're always encouraging people, when they go to replace their items, to check to see if they're eligible for a rebate and take advantage of it, because you have been paying for it all along. And the criteria to get that rebate is usually to have like an Energy Star, is usually the rating, an Energy Star rated appliance, and then you'll be eligible for a rebate. But definitely look into those things, especially I noticed there are quite a few people on the call who own their units. So when you go to replace some of your appliances, look to see if you're eligible for a rebate. Okay, then I'm going to go to the purple section. This, in multifamily buildings, it's likely going to be a bit more rare for you to be able to do these programs. But if you happen to be in a townhome, for example, it might be something that you could participate in. If you have a central air conditioning unit, you can sign up to get a saver switch, which is a little device they stick on your unit. And during these high energy use times, when the system is really strained to provide enough electricity, they can cycle the air conditioner on and off for short amount of time, like say 20 minutes at a time. They're not going to shut it off all day. And they reward you for giving them that ability to control demand by taking 15% off your bill all summer long. And when we talk about how summer bills are the highest, we're paying more for what we use and we're using more, that 15% is especially helpful. So if that's something that you're building where you have your own AC unit, I encourage you to look into participating in that program if you aren't already. Likewise, if you happen to have an electric water heater, you can participate in a similar program where they put a switch on your water heater. And this is a year-long program. It operates the same way that they can cycle it on and off during peak times, and they give you 2% off your bill all year long, not just the summer months. So something to keep in mind. And then finally, we want to talk about taxes and fees. Not something we can't avoid these. They're on just about everything. But the point we want to make with that, and the taxes and fees vary based on where you live. So your bill in St. Louis Park looks different than this bill, which is from the Maple Plain area west of you. But what we want you to concentrate is the taxes and fees are based on the subtotal of the bill. So the lower you can get that subtotal, the less your taxes and fees are going to be as well. Okay, and please type in any questions you might have about the bill, and I'll try my best to address them. But we can move on with the next slide as well. Okay, so as we're talking about multifamily buildings, we want to approach this with that in mind. And so we know we have renters in the audience as well. And so, and owners of units in multifamily buildings. So the important thing is to focus on what you can control. The nature of a multifamily building is there's a little less to control than if you were in a single family home, because there's some joint property that's happening. Some things are built into fees or into your rent. But if you're renting, what we want you to kind of keep in mind is your housing costs are rent plus utilities. So that plays a role. And if you're looking to move, to understand like what is that utility piece expected to be in that particular unit, so you're not surprised. Where you could be looking at inexpensive rent, but if the utilities are more than what you're used to, maybe you're not actually saving any money, maybe things are more expensive than you're expecting. So it's important to ask those questions. And this is the same as if you're going to be buying something too, to be inquiring about what are the average utility expenses that you could expect. So asking your landlord or management, or if you're buying something, to be asking the realtor these questions. Understanding what your rights and responsibilities are. Again, if renting, so who's responsible for servicing if there is a central air conditioning unit, perhaps in a townhome? What are you supposed to take care of? What are they going to take care of? How does that work? So understanding that, and what utilities are you responsible for, and how are they built into your rent, or are they all separate? And then also, you know, looking at the relationship with your landlord, and Annie's going to talk about this a little bit later. There's programs that your landlord could participate in to make your building more efficient that would benefit you as a resident of that building too. So letting them know about programs is also a good idea. And then if you're owning, you have more control over what's inside of your unit. So you will get to decide like what type of refrigerator you might have, or what type of stove or washer or dryer, that type of thing. So thinking about those things and the appliances, and when it comes time for replacement, aiming for those Energy Star rated, most efficient appliances is a great way to go, because it'll save you money in the long run. And as we mentioned a little bit ago, taking advantage of the rebates that are available to you as you're replacing those items. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're going to just touch on some good energy saving tips that really apply to many situations. So when we talk about energy and climate goals and all these things that this residents of St. Louis Park are concerned and interested about, and you may have heard this before, but like the cheapest, cleanest energy is what you never use in the first place. So it's always energy efficiency first, and thinking about reducing your usage, because it not only reduces your impact, but it reduces your costs as well. And there's a lot of quick and easy tips that you can do to reduce that usage and save you money. The other thing to keep in mind is that the opportunities of how you use energy and how you reduce your usage is very seasonally dependent. And we're going to talk about that and what things to focus on during different seasons of the year. Next slide, please. Okay, and sorry to have to go back to COVID a little bit too, because these are unusual times in terms of even our energy use. So, you know, so many people are home more than they typically are, and that is impacting your energy bill. You may have already noticed it a little bit. The more we're home, the more energy we use. So, you know, just to be kind of prepared and not surprised that a lot of households are going to see increased energy use over these last several months. And there's not a lot we can do about it other than, you know, just to be kind of conscious of what we are doing and being careful when we can. But it's also very important to stay comfortable during these times, and obviously not sacrificing anything related to our health as well. So that's one of the reasons it's been really great that Excel and Centerpoint aren't threatening shutoffs right now, because people really need to take care of themselves. But we also want to watch the usage as well and be reasonable with that. So during this COVID stuff, it's especially important to be thinking about your thermostat and adjusting it based on the weather, because we talked about earlier was that over half of our energy use is heating and cooling. So continuing to do that to keep your bills manageable, especially as you're home more. This time of year and in the winter months, managing the sun's really important, because there's a lot of passive heat that needs to be controlled. So days like today in the last several weeks, you want to be shutting your window treatments, keeping that hot sun out to try to control the temperature inside your home. In the cooler months, it's the opposite. Open up those windows and let that heat, that natural sunlight, heat up your home and your unit. And then the other thing to be thinking about as you're home more, and we're all likely using a lot more electronics, is, you know, we talked about electronics, is reducing phantom power. So unplugging things when you're done with them, just really powering things down, because your TV may be on a lot more than it was on laptops, more, all of those things. So just being aware of these unique issues. Next slide, please. Okay, and then Annie's going to touch on a couple programs that the city is very interested in.
Yeah, so there's a program that we wanted to highlight. It's through partnership from Excel and Centerpoint, and it's called the Multifamily Building Efficiency Program. And so how that works is, as a program, it offers a whole building energy analysis for your building. And when those experts from Excel and Centerpoint come, they can actually install energy saving items such as LED lights, efficient shower heads, faucet aerators, power strips, and door sweeps. And all of those things can help your building save energy and money in the long run. And then they will also give your building manager a report of home improvement projects that can help improve comfort and energy performance. And so we wanted to highlight this because if you're taking part in this webinar, you might live in a multifamily building with management that is also interested in saving energy and money. So this is one program you can share with them to help your whole building become more efficient. And we wanted to discuss that we also are highlighting that as part of the Climate Champions program at the city. So buildings that participate in Excel Energy's multifamily building energy program and then follow up with that and pursue any energy savings projects will actually be recognized as a St. Louis Park Climate Champion for doing their part to help our community achieve our goal of carbon neutrality by 2040. So if your building is interested in pursuing that and they undergo the program and then pursue any of those projects, they can be recognized for the good work that you've done. And so if you want any more information on that, you can reach out to me and we can definitely help send materials and connect you and your building managers with the people at Excel and Centerpoint that can make that happen.
Okay, so now we're going to go over a handful of of just quick and easy energy tips for your household. This is probably the third time I've said this, but turning off and unplugging electronics when not in use. It's a really easy step. We're not going to claim it's going to save you tons and tons of money, but it's an easy thing to do, and it all adds up. So also be kind of reasonable about this. So for example, at my house, I unplug the Keurig coffee maker when we're done using it, but I'm not going to unplug the microwave, for example, right? Like pick the things that are easy to do. Related to this is consider using power strips. So putting things on power strips, and then all you have to do is flip that power strip off and everything's off. So a really good area of your home for this is like your entertainment center. So you might have a TV, you may still have a DVD player, could be a DVR, game consoles, all of that. They can all be on the power strip. And then you just shut that off and everything is turned off. Because if you can just click something on with the remote, it was actually never totally off. It's using less energy, but it's still using some energy. And these are really quick things to do. If you do have like a DVR thing where you're recording TV, that needs to stay on. So what you can do is they have special smart strips, they're called, where you plug certain things into certain plugs and it knows enough to stay on and turn things on to correspond with that. So there's ways of working around things that have to stay on, but a really easy, simple thing to do. Use LED light bulbs. If you haven't already converted to that, I strongly encourage you to start using them. It's a really easy way to significantly, sorry, my cat's coming, really easy way to save significant amount of energy, because the LED light bulbs use just a fraction of a traditional incandescent light bulb. And even as renters, our little tip is, if you come into a unit and they still have incandescent light bulbs in, or even CFLs, which are almost as efficient as LEDs, but not quite, unscrew them, get your own LED bulbs, put them in. They're going to last several years. You leave the unit, say in 2 years, put the old light bulbs back that were there when you arrived and take the LEDs with you. Because they last many years, and it's a great investment. It doesn't cost much. If you go to different hardware stores or home improvement stores, you'll often see there'll be like an on-the-spot rebate. Guess what pays for that rebate? That resource adjustment line we talked about in your bill. So take advantage of those discounted light bulbs and use them. It's going to save a lot on your energy bill. And they're especially nice when you think about hard to reach areas where maybe you have to climb up. You're not going to have to be replacing them on a regular basis. They should last for many years. Some other things related to using appliances in your home. So running a full dishwasher versus half full dishwasher uses the exact same amount of energy. So try to run full loads of things. This includes laundry as well. Many dishwashers have a heated drying option. Turn that off. You don't need it. Your dishes are already sanitized. You can save energy just by opening up the door and letting them air dry. If you are in a situation where you have your own washer and dryer, and especially if you're paying for your own water heating, washing with cold water will also save you money and energy, because we mentioned water heating is 15% of a household's bill. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now we're going to talk about summertime. We're living through it right now, that's for sure. It's very hot and humid. So cooling your home is going to be one of your bigger energy uses if you have air conditioning in your unit. So what's recommended by the Department of Energy is trying to wait until it's 78 inside before you turn the air conditioning on. Now we recognize this is not comfortable for everybody, especially when it's humid. So work on just adjusting it a degree or two at a time to find that right mix of comfort and cooling. The other thing you can do to try to make yourself feel cooler is if you have a fan blowing, it'll actually make you feel up to 4 degrees cooler than what it actually is because of the wind chill effect. So if you do wait till 78 before your air conditioner turns on, and then you have a fan blowing on you, it's actually going to feel like it's 74. So this is especially helpful at night when most people need it a little bit cooler to sleep. So maybe you do reduce the thermostat a little bit more, like to 76 or 75, but you have a fan blowing on you and it's going to feel much more comfortable. As we mentioned before, control the sunlight coming into your home. On those hot sunny days, shut the shades, your curtains, your blinds, keep that hot sun out. When you're able to, and when it's cool and in the early mornings, open up the windows, let that fresh air in, and reduce your need to have air conditioning. And when you do have an air conditioner, keep it free of debris and well serviced. You also want to insulate your window units with caulk to avoid having that warm air come in. Just like the opposite, where we try to keep the cold air out. In the wintertime, we want to keep that hot air out in the summertime. And then also avoid putting electronics that give off a lot of heat next to that air conditioner, because that's going to cause it to run even more than it actually needs to. Next slide, please. Okay, and then shifting to winter, a few months from now, again, it's all about controlling your room temperature. So what's recommended is 68 when you're home. Again, if this isn't comfortable, that back to adjusting a degree or two at a time is what's recommended. And again, especially important when you're paying for your heat, is reducing it while you're away or asleep. So you can reduce it up to 10 degrees. And then ideally you have a programmable thermostat where if you know you're going to be home at 5 or 6, that it comes on about an hour before you arrive, so it's warmed up and comfortable by the time you get home. The same like overnight. So if you normally wake up at 7 in the morning, at 6 o'clock, then probably the temperature starts bumping up. And even if you're not paying for your heat and you have the ability to control your thermostat, it's good for your whole building not to be using more energy than is necessary, because one way or another, you're paying for that, either through rent or through homeowners association fees. So just being responsible about staying comfortable and managing your energy use is the way to go. This applies more to single family homes, but I think units in multifamily buildings also, but never below 55 degrees, because you don't want to risk your pipes freezing. So in multifamily buildings, it's a little bit different setup, but if you were, say, in a townhome, you want to also be thinking about this too. It's just not worth it to have frozen pipes in any kind of building. That's a complete disaster. So, and then the sun in the winter time, we want to use that to keep your home warmer and not have to use as much heat. Wear layers, and then as much as you can, avoid or minimize using a space heater. I mentioned earlier, we'll sometimes see that peak of electricity in the wintertime, and that's often because of space heaters. They are very expensive to run. Occasionally it's necessary, but hopefully your building is in good enough shape that this is very minimal. Reach out to your maintenance people if you're having a hard time keeping your unit warm and comfortable, because you really want to avoid using a space heater. They just use a ton of energy and it gets very expensive. Next slide, please. Okay, so hopefully we gave you a nice variety of things to be thinking about. We'd love to hear questions and answer anything you might have about your specific situation or general questions. As I mentioned earlier, we give free energy bill consultations. You can see our website below. You can go there and there's an events page, and we have several we call them bill clinics set up, where you can sign up for a 30-minute slot to go over your energy bills with us, and we give you customized suggestions based on your unique situation. And we can also sign up for a newsletter, and we appreciate your interest in our organization. I think Annie has a few other things to add to, and then we'll be happy to take some more questions.
Great. Yeah, the only other things I wanted to go over was just to again say, if you're interested in following up, please sign up for those upcoming bill clinics from the Citizens Utility Board. And I'll make sure to include this contact information again with a follow-up email that I send out. But more generally, if you have any questions about the Climate Action Plan and energy and sustainability in St. Louis Park, please reach out to either myself or Emily, and we will drop our contact information for that as well. But other than that, I'll open it up for questions, and I'll stop sharing my screen here as well.
Hannah has put some information additionally in the chat, so take a look. There's she mentioned, which is a really great tip, there's actually a number of free home energy efficiency program products you can get from CenterPoint Energy. If you're a CenterPoint Energy customer, they can send you free aerators for your faucets. You can get a number of products that will help you reduce your hot water usage and use less energy in your home. Weather stripping, a bunch of nice things, all for free. Again, paid for via your utility bill.
Well, we'll leave the chat open here for a few more minutes, but everyone has our contact information here, so if you have any questions later, please do reach out to us. One more thing I wanted to mention was that we have a similar webinar next week from noon to 1 that will be focused on residents of single-family homes. So if you have family, your friends or neighbors you think might be interested in hearing a similar presentation, we will share the link for that.
And there was a question about the Saver Switch program, if there was a commitment to a certain number of years to enroll. No, there isn't. You just have to, if you're a renter, you need permission from your landlord to enroll, but otherwise they come out, you don't even need to be home. They install it, and then you'll start getting a discount on your bill. If you're taking over a unit that already has a Saver Switch, it's a good idea just to contact the utility and make sure it's enrolled as part of your account as well. Oh, yes, another good question. And Hannah, I think I'm going to ask you to look this up so I don't get it wrong. The question is, ceiling fans turn in different directions in summer versus winter. Can you remind us which direction is which? Yes, that is a very good thing to double check because they do actually switch directions. There's often this little switch on the top of the fan. And a nice little trick is when you figure out which direction to do it, and Hannah's going to look that up for us, I believe, and hopefully she can put the answer in the chat, is that you can just get a Sharpie marker and write winter on one top of the switch and then the other switch write summer, so you don't have to keep trying to look it up and remember, because one is counterclockwise and the other is clockwise. Were you able to find that, Hannah? Okay. Okay, so the answer is you should rotate it counterclockwise in the summer, and that way the blades are pushing the hot air away from you. And in the winter time, it's going to be going the opposite, and the blades are going to be pushing the warm air down. In the winter time, the trick is you don't want to have the fan spinning super fast because you're going to get that wind chill effect, which is the opposite of what you're looking for. They can be slowly rotating to circulate the air and pushing it down. In the summer, full bore is fine if that's comfortable for you because you're whisking that hot air away from you.
And I just got a question sent just to the host. So it says, we had savers switched on a single family home. Now we're in a large condo with our own AC for each condo on the roof. Can we still get savers switch?
I don't think you're able to do that. I think it needs to be like on the ground and easily accessible. So unfortunately, that's not an option in a multifamily building.
And I would highlight again, I believe condos can still participate in the multifamily program from Excel. So there are still a lot of options that even if Saver Switch won't work, that there are other savings options there.
And it, you know, as I am saying that, it might be worth contacting Excel and just double checking, because sometimes they change the program parameters and things. The last I checked, it wasn't an option, but to double check and call customer service wouldn't be a bad thing.
Great. Are there any more questions?
Are there timers for outdoor lightings? How do they work? Yes, I believe you can get different timings. It's probably going to depend on the type of lighting that you have. I think we're all pretty familiar with like motion sensing lighting. That's a very easy way to just minimize the amount of time that those lights are on. So I would just take a look at the type of lighting you have and potentially, go to a home improvement store and ask if there's additional devices that you can add that will work for that particular type of lighting. Like for holiday lights, for example, it's very simple to get a timer. And you just plug in the outlet to it, and then it automatically does it. But lighting timers are a great idea, even like for safety issues, where some people like to have some lights on inside their home too. And putting that on a timer is a great way to be able to keep that light on without using more energy than you need to. Do you have any advice about water heaters? Okay, so the question about on-demand water heating instead of the whole tank. Again, it'll be good to talk to a few different contractors about what's going to work best in your home and based on your lifestyle. So the on-demand water heaters can be a really good option for some households, as long as the demand can keep up with the unit and how much hot water it produces. Where we've heard challenges is when a lot of hot water is needed all at the same time, maybe in different parts of the building, it can be challenging for it to keep up. But if you have like a smaller household in particular, it can be a really good option for you. You need to also talk to to the contractors about how to best maintain it too, because there is some different type of maintenance that's required for them to make sure that they operate efficiently and that you don't have problems. But good question, because as we mentioned, hot water use can use a lot of energy, so finding the right type of hot water heater is an important consideration. Typically, you're going to look at a gas on-demand water heater because the electric versions require such a surge of power to get that on-demand instant heat that it could require additional wiring and power changes. So you'd have to consider those sorts of options as well in terms of which type of system is going to work in your house, in your home. Okay, different porch lights. Oh yeah, different. Yeah, that is sort of someone mentioned. I see so many porch lights on in the daylight would be an easy way to save. Yes, that's kind of one of my pet peeves, but I think people just forget to shut them off. However, if they're using LED light bulbs, we can feel a little bit better that it's not using as much energy as it would if it was an incandescent light bulb. So another good reason to use an LED is because if you forget to shut something off, it's not using nearly as much energy as a traditional light bulb would. Did I miss any other questions?
I don't think so. So since we're getting to the end here, it doesn't look like there are any more questions. But again, we'll send out our contact information if you have any afterwards. We will wrap it up here. So we just wanted to say thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and I hope you all have a good night.
Thank you so much for having us, and thanks to all of you who attended.
Thank you. It was a great presentation.